Well, here I am back teaching my iPhone. This is the first of 7 lessons I'm planning on sharing concerning the ways of God. This is introduction, be the kind of the introduction to the ways of God. Obviously, I'm not going to cover all his ways in these lessons, but I'm hoping to lay a foundation so that we as a people begin to recognize the hand of God in the midst of our situation and circumstance. I love the story in 2 Kings chapter 6, where a servant of God came to Elisha, crying out in fear about what he had just seen. For their city was surrounded by the armies of the enemy. But Elisha was not all that concerned. For you see, he had God's perspective. So he prayed, "Lord, open my servant's eyes." Then his servant saw into the spiritual realm, God's perspective, and he saw the armies of God surrounding the armies of the enemy. See, I want to be among a people that doesn't constantly cry out in fear over what CNN, Fox, ABC, CBS, etc. says, but a people that walks in and understands God's perspective on the events surrounding us. Now, I want to tell you a story. I grew up in a farming community on the west side of Phoenix called Litchfield. During the summer, we high school, college-age boys would all work in the fields. And usually we'd have Sunday afternoon free. And Sunday afternoon, we'd all congregate at the local park and play wiffle ball for a couple hours. We'd come together, choose up sides, and play. And being guys, there'd always be arguments about who was safe, who was out, what was a ball, what was a strike. That just naturally occurred. Well, after a number of weeks of this, one of the guys told me, he said, "Louie, I just want to let you know, when we choose up sides, you get chosen first. Not because you're the best player, but you're the best arguer." Well, that argumentative attitude was in the makeup of my heart when it came to the Lord years later. So when I first came to the Lord, it seemed I struggled and fought with him constantly, crying out with phrases like, "Why are you letting this happen? Why aren't you intervening in this situation? Why don't you answer my prayer? Why do you do what you do? I don't understand you." And often I would plead my case before the Lord saying, "Okay, you say you're love, but look at my situation. If you're truly love, this situation wouldn't be occurring. Your love and my life doesn't match up." But knowing I had no place else to go in order to find my answers, I poured myself into his word, because my heart was gripped with trying to learn and understand God and why he does what he does, his ways. This teaching into the ways of God is the foundation of some of the things I've learned. When God speaks to us, and we know it's him, there's a tremendous joy and excitement that bubbles up within our heart. For at that moment, we realize the God of the universe has looked down and chosen me to reveal to me part of his plan and purpose for my life. And when that occurs, I just naturally, actively seek after God in order to get him to speak to me more concerning the issue. Also, during this time, I'm seeking the Lord. I'm planning on his promise to occur very quickly in my life, because I'm assuming that's just the way it works. Then, as the promise seems to wane, I go into fasting and praying and striving with the Lord in order to convince Him to fulfill it without any more delay. But it seems the more I work at it, the farther away my promise seems to become. And I can't seem to get Him to hurry along with fulfilling what He's promised me. When that occurs, that unbridled spirit of anxiousness, impatience arises in my heart. And I become convinced, or others convince me, I must do something. You see, I've heard it said countless times, God's already done everything He's going to do. Jesus has already died on the cross. Now it's up to you and I to get the job done. After all, we have the Word. We have God's promises. Now it's up to you and I to get in there and make it work. And so the promise that God has given me is a word to embrace, cherish, ponder, and hold on to. A promise that we hold on to, guard, and nurture in our hearts until it becomes a living, pregnant word within us. We take it as a challenge to act upon in the name of faith, of course, or really just Christian zeal, only to see it end up not working at all, causing disillusionment, frustration, and anger towards God. So I come to a point sometime in my walk, and usually fairly soon, when things don't go my way, in my time, according to my will, when the temptation comes, and it comes very strong, for my heart to go astray. Meaning, I begin to accuse God, saying, you really don't love me, you really don't care about me, you put me into this situation to harass and torment me. If you really love me, this wouldn't be happening in my life. This was pretty much my testimony until I read this verse. Hebrews chapter 3, verse 10. Their hearts are always going astray. They have not known my ways. I knew this is speaking directly to me. My heart was always going astray from the love of God. Why? This verse says it very clearly. I did not know His ways. It was then I began to attempt to learn something of His ways. And I discovered this very important lesson. There's nothing in common with the ways of God and the ways of man. And I'm going to repeat that. There is nothing in common with the ways of God and the ways of man. Isaiah 55, verse 8 and 9 states it very clearly. My thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways. We read in Exodus chapter 13, 17 to 18. This is a story when the children of Israel coming out of Egypt. God begins to lead them. Verse 17 says this, Now when Pharaoh had let the people go, God did not lead them by the way of the land of the Philistines, even though it was near. For God said the people might change their minds when they see war and return to Egypt. Hence, God led the people around by the way of the wilderness to the Red Sea. And the sons of Israel went up in martial array from the land of Egypt. Why did He not lead them the way of the Philistines? Because there's nothing in common with the way of the Philistines, the way of men, and the way of God. The Philistine spirit is the spirit of this world. It's the natural man. It knows nothing of the Spirit of God. It seems to be leading in the general direction of our pursuit of God, and is enticing to the natural mind. It is a logical approach to the things of God. It is the positive, most direct approach to the things we quote spiritual. But notice, the Lord did not want them to go the way of the Philistines or the way of men. Why? Because when they see war, they'll turn back. When things get tough, they're walking the way of the world. When things get tough, people tend to backslide. Because they cry out, God, why are you doing what you're doing? I don't understand what you're doing. I think you've left me. I don't think you love me. Often those who try to accomplish God's will, man's way, will often backslide. Why? Their hearts have gone astray because they don't know his ways. Natural man's passion is to accomplish something big in this world. And we try to accomplish with our own zeal, our own strength, our own power. God's passion is for a man to know him, and his heart to be transformed by the Spirit of God, thereby enabling him to accomplish much bigger things than he would ever be able to accomplish in his natural strength. Knowing and walking in God's ways, knowing and walking in his ways, is a key to fulfilling God's purpose in your life. I'm going to read in Exodus chapter 33 about Moses. I thought this is fascinating when I began to understand this just a little bit. Exodus 33 verse 11 says this, thus the Lord would speak to Moses face to face, just as the man would speak to his friend. Moses had a face-to-face relationship with the Lord. Imagine that. He can talk to God about anything. He would talk to him about whatever on his heart, and God would answer him. That seemingly would be as good as it gets. But read what Moses says 2 verses later. Exodus 33 verse 13 says this, now therefore I pray you, if I have found favor in your sight, let me know your ways, that I may know you, so that I may find favor in your sight. In other words, even though Moses had a face-to-face relationship with God, talking to him about whatever he wanted to, at any time he wanted to, he still did not know God. He had to know his ways. This is what we'll be studying the next six lessons. We'll be studying his ways. Thanks.